Hi, welcome to the DIY Photo Organising Podcast. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. Imagine you can find any photo at any time at the click of a button. We are here to show you how.
So let's get started. So welcome to another episode of DIY Photo Organising Podcast. Hi Chantal, how are you?
Hi Fiona, I'm good. How are
That's
you?
great. Yeah, really good. All right, so we're thrilled to be able to have you join us today. And today we're going to be talking about what to do with your work photos. Have you come across these topics and discussions with some people before, Chantal?
Yeah, quite often actually. It's sort of a constant question. It comes up all the time.
Yeah, for me as well. I think it's, the majority of us are working at some point, and so we've collected work photos along the way. So what we thought we'd do is just have a bit of a chat about some of the things that we have been able to help people with, some ideas that maybe you can think about when you're organising your own photos for whether you do that within your own sort of personal photos, with work photos, do you keep them separate? What do you need to consider when you're looking at this as part of your overall photo organising sort of project management. So let's just maybe, Chantal, have a little bit of a chat about some of the examples of some of these issues that come up as far as when it gets sort of a bit more than just a few happy snap work photos, and we're dealing with some more significant volumes of work photos, and when do those types of things come up that you've seen as well?
Yeah, so as you just mentioned, it's not, about a few snaps that we take when we go to a business or a work Christmas party or something. What we're talking about here is actually the work-related photos that we ourselves take some of them when we work with a client on their project. We come across a lot of photos that people take who have their own businesses, so they sometimes take before and after shots in the organizing industry. That's quite common.
Yep.
And others, like, that goes for so many business people out there, like tradies. They often take before and after shots, and progress. They document the progress on a project, things like that.
And even people that are taking photos, say for like marketing shots and things like that, say they're taking product shots or of the products that they're selling or they're promoting, or even just to do their own maybe Instagram for business and things like that.
Yeah. And I think we both come across that quite regularly. I mean, it's maybe a bit more when we work with smaller businesses or people who own small business. They might sometimes then they struggle, and say, so I take all these work photos. Where do I put them? Do they need to go in my personal photo hub? Do I keep them separate? How do I manage them? What do I do with them?
That's right. And then we've got the other ones that are really sort of business photos. So that's a whole area of just, you're a business. You've got, a whole range of types of reasons why you take photos, and then, how do they get organised? So we've sort of got the two very, they're all involving work photos. So, but they're all come across the same types of issues as to what to do.
So what we thought we're going to talk about a little bit, basically, we all need to make the decision at one stage. Do we put all the photos in one place, in one photo hub, or do we have two? And there's reasons why to have only one or why to have two, and we thought we might talk about these reasons a little bit and go through that, and through questions that we would encourage you to think about before you make a decision. so that you actually have a solution that will work for you and
Exactly.
for your situation, because everyone's different.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Good. So, yeah, so some of those questions that we would encourage you to think about would be, who else is going to need access to these photos? So, is it just yourself, or are there other people that need to access the photos, the work related photos? So, that's something to consider.
yeah, that's really important. And also, um, how do you want to access these photos? If your job, um, I don't know, I can't think of an example right now, but if you need to show photos to a client, for example, when you go and meet clients, um, you need to be able to access them somehow while you're on the road, so to speak. So you
Yes,
might want at least some photos accessible through your phone or maybe a tablet, so that you can show that to clients. And that might require a different setup and a different system that you maybe use for your personal photos.
exactly.
Mm.
Yep, that's exactly right. And another thing to one of the other questions to think about before you make this decision is there a photo management system that's actually required? So is this something that is going to be more in depth, that is going to be using keywording and a whole range of different, like we've talked about all the way through in the podcast, in the management of those photos, an ongoing management, searchability to look at, and um, and so that's another thing to consider. Is that sort of in-depth photo management system required?
Yeah, absolutely. And it might apply more to corporate world,
Mm,
but even for small businesses, depending on what you do, it might be a requirement, or it might be a good idea to actually look into that, and 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 get a good photo management system.
absolutely. Yep.
So another question will, will be coming back to our um is it the second golden rule? I should know by now. The second golden rule, know your why. So what I want to say with that is, you should think about maybe what are you going to use the photos for eventually.
Yep.
As we mentioned before, for an example, you might need them while you're in client meetings to show them results and before and afters, or you might need them solely for the purpose um, to document a project for
Yep.
your client. The client might not even see these photos, but just for your documentation of the progress or something. So they might not need to be shared. It's just, they're going to be taken, they're going to be filed and document, just to document a thing. They might be used for social media, for marketing purposes. So that's a whole different thing. That's a
Yep.
completely different requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to just have a think right up front as to when you'll need them again and what kind of access you'll need. Because, recently I've also worked with a client that was in home maintenance type services, and they took photos of all the repairs of what they were doing at the time, but then that was just recorded for if there was an issue down the track. They had a documented photography, capturing of all the things that have been happening along the way,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't necessarily be shown again,
Mm.
but definitely needed to be tracked well with the
Yeah.
specific details of clients and address and say real estate agent of and links like that was easy to find,
Yeah.
and so metadata in that area was really important, but they didn't need it on a mobile device because it could they could definitely just go back and retrieve that
Yes.
quickly, but they didn't have to show it on site every time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it really does vary.
And if you use photos in your business, um, for social media. Let's say you've got an Instagram account and you have the habit to edit and play around with your photos before you post them. You might want to do that on certain apps, and a lot of these apps only work on phones. So you will want to be able to access these photos through your phone and edit them on the phone and put them on the Instagram or whatever social media account. So again, it's really, it can become actually quite tricky.
Well, that's true. And then people put them in somewhere and then they load them up and then they're not sure if they've then saved them back again, or, it really can get a bit confusing for people.
Yeah.
Mm,
But these are like, fundamental questions that I think it's worth taking a little bit of time to think about these. And then, of course, when you're in a actual corporate environment and when the business is big enough, you might have even a dedicated person who looks after the photos so that you've got a corporate photo hub, a whole asset management system. So that's a whole different world again.
absolutely.
That's not really what we got going to talk about today, but that is a possibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. I mean, principles still stay the same
Yeah.
as what we've been talking about, but the way the options there are available because can be different because of the need for other people to access these types of asset management sort of structures.
And that will definitely require some sort of, good organizing and metadata
Yes.
so you can.
And by now, most of our listeners will all be expert photo organizers for their own stuff.
Yeah.
So they can then go and volunteer to be a photo asset management for their own company.
Yes. I'm always thinking like schools, I'd love to organize schools photo hubs.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing because they do take a lot of photos, and even on camps when they go on the camps, and it's just all the different types of events. And
The lack of ideas, is it?
what was that?
It's not the lack of
Oh no,
ideas. We
that's
have so
true.
many ideas, but we only have two hands.
I know. Very true. All right. So let's have a talk about when maybe one hub might be better than having two. So we would say that in this situation, say you're running your own small business and
Mm,
it's just yourself, then you're using your photos for work in a smaller capacity. So it's really something like for your own social media,
mhm,
for some client shots. But we would suggest then that you might be able to manage that within one hub because you can use the separation of those work photos with the keywording
yeah.
and tagging that we've talked about in the past.
Mhm.
But when you're running a small business, just say with one person, one hub might be better than having a separate hub so that it's easily accessible to you at all times.
Yeah, it's a bit personal preference, really. If it's, as you say, a really small business, there's no right and wrong. It has to work for you. And it's just sometimes it can be tricky to maintain two different hubs as well. So it might be easy to just work with one.
Yeah, and if just say you're using the Mac ecosystem, the Apple Mac ecosystem, and you've got an iPhone and you take photos for work, and then you've got some personal photos, it really can be an extra labor involved to just separate that out. And so it just kind of add some additional processes, which again is personal choice, and that may be appropriate or a preferred option. But just be aware that it will take just a little bit more time to be mindful. But you can just add that into your monthly or weekly, photo organizing steps, and you can do that. But in that situation, we feel that often it can be managed through the keywords and those types of features in your hub without having to have a whole new hub.
Yeah. Or have a separate folder for all the work photos or something like that. So there's ways. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Yeah.
Now, when is it better to have two separate hubs? One that we mentioned before, if it's a corporate environment, you might actually have to upload your photos somehow to the corporate, you know, to whatever database they use, and to give them you photos that you took on the job, so that they're in a central location for everyone that needs them. So that might be a requirement by the, that the business tells you what you need to do.
Yeah.
I think you've got an example of that when different people, sort of need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, so I've worked with a company as well where there's about three people that take photos independently, or at different times throughout the week, and they all need to be managed into a central area. So sharing of photos, again, even as simple as coming through the share portfolio of the Mac in the Mac ecosystem, through Apple iCloud. Um, that is definitely one way to be able to manage that, which is the case in this setup. But that's really it is a deliberate steps that need to be put in place to manage that well, because there are three or four people that do take photos. There's before and after photos that are taken, and then they all need to be able to be housed in one central location.
So do they download them when they get back to the office or something? They, sort of connect the phone to the computer and download them to the business network, or do they share albums or something, or how do they manage
They
that?
share albums into a corporate iCloud account, so it's then
Oh,
housed in. So the company has an Apple ID,
oh, I
and
see.
then they share to that Apple ID,
Right,
and
okay.
then that's the photo library that gets backed up and managed.
That sounds a bit
It
complicated.
is, it is, and look there, and that's obviously where it has to be a separate hub, because that's a separate Apple ID. And then they use them all on that, in the Apple ecosystem, so it stays within iCloud photo library.
Yeah, I
Yeah, but that's definitely one way that managers, and look, they have different folders for different events and for different updates on projects, and it works well. But they have to, again, be mindful to make sure that the three or four individual people that are taking those photos are sharing them to that correct album, and then they are getting then taken out of that shared album into the library of that Apple ID.
it's quite. I imagine it can become quite tricky because it does involve humans, and it's actual manual steps that you need to take. You can't automate that in this case.
No, and it's, yeah, and it varies throughout, the week and the month as to how many are taken. Sometimes there's a lot, and sometimes there's not many. So it
Right.
is it is still definitely a manual process.
Yeah. And obviously, when we talk corporate as well, there is really good photo management software out there. And I know we both really like Adobe Lightroom for that, but
Yep.
that's not a self-explanatory, easy program to learn.
That's right. But it's a fantastic program out there if anyone wants to look into that. It is, yeah, it's a great photo management
Mm,
software. And
absolutely,
there's some
yeah.
great training that's also possible to be done through that. We'll put the link in the show notes, Chantel, for Adam Pratt's course in Lightroom. If someone
Mm,
did want to take that on and have a look at that, it's a fantastic course that really goes through how to run a photo management program through the Adobe Lightroom.
yeah, and it's focused on the organizing part, not so much on editing and all what you can do with that too, but
Exactly.
organizing. So, from a business perspective, I would say it's definitely worth looking into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not if you take, 3 work photos a month.
No, that's right.
You've got heaps and heaps. It might be worth to check that out.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Definitely recommend it.
So have we covered everything sort of?
I think so. So let's just maybe talk through some best practices that we think that people should be mindful of
Yeah,
as they go down and journey through this photo organizing for work photos.
it is a journey,
It
isn't it?
is.
So, best practice would be to really, what we just discussed, think about all these different questions before you make a decision.
Yes.
That will save you time further down the track.
It will, especially if you've obviously been doing something up until this point.
Yeah.
So they're there somewhere. They're either mixed in amongst the personal photos,
Mhm.
or they're just sitting scattered all over a range of different computers and devices, within a corporate setting.
Yeah.
So once you've made that decision as to which way you're going to go, then just thinking really, in depth about the needs that you're going to have for accessing the photos and who's going to be accessing them and things like that, so that you can make this change and this sort of implementation step once.
Yeah.
Mm.
And of course, backing up is
Yes.
always a question, whether it's personal or work photos. The same rules apply.
Yep.
3-2-1 rule applies and is best practice. And if you haven't listened to that yet, you should go to episode 2, I think, where we talk in depth about that first golden rule to back up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Another
Mm,
best practice in this area would definitely be regularly maintaining the photo management process that you're going to do from work. So just get some checklists for yourself or diarize some dates, to either pull down the photos from other people or to go through your own personal photos and allocate them either keywords for
yeah.
work, but whichever steps you do, just keeping regular maintenance of that so that it doesn't get too overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point. That's really key to success, isn't it?
it is.
Amongst
Absolutely.
other
Otherwise,
um,
we wouldn't all be in this mess.
and also the last one would be, especially if you're a bigger business, um, just be mindful of copyright. Fiona, you mentioned like product shots before, so that's
Yep.
often made by professional photographers, and that's always linked to copyright. So be mindful of that and find out what you can and what you can't do to be on the safe side.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Very good.
Fantastic. Well, that's good. I think that just gave us a little bit of an overview just to give you some things to think about really when it comes to your work photos.
Mm. Very.
And please, again, as always, if you've got questions or something pops up that you just want to run by us, just head on over to the Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Fiona.
All right, thanks, Chantal.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye now.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of DIY photo organizing and found some inspiration, useful tips, and strategies to support your photo projects.
We'd love to invite you to pop over to our Facebook page, DIY Photo Organising, and we welcome your questions, feedback, and any future topics that you'd like us to cover. If there is someone you'd love to share this with, please click on share to help others take control of their photos too. Remember, have a look through our show notes for links to helpful information. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. And remember, we believe in you and you can do this.